The Fallen Order gameplay demo was released earlier today at EA Play. Since Star Wars Celebration, I've been looking forward to getting a look at Cal and BD-1 in action, his abilities in the Force, and what the Respawn developers have been calling thoughtful combat. Now we have a better idea of what we can expect from the game come November. These are my thoughts on what was shown. The setup for this part of the game is that it's about 3 hours into the story. The devs describe Cal as having become more than a Padawan, but he's not quite at the level of a Jedi Knight. We already have our lightsaber, and we're helping Saw Gerrera liberate some Wookiees on Kashyyyk. This all feels incredibly similar to at least part of The Force Unleashed, where you assist the early rebellion and liberate some Wookiees on Kashyyyk. But I expect Kashyyyk was chosen for the demo on purpose. It's a planet most everyone is familiar with already, so it's not giving away much from the story, and we can just focus on the gameplay and not be so worried about seeing a brand new environment for the first time. My initial reaction to the combat was that it also felt pretty similar to The Force Unleashed, albeit toned down. I've been saying pretty much since the game was announced that I didn't want it to feel that way. As a not fully trained Force user, I wanted to feel like I was barely surviving combat. I didn't want to run into a group of stormtroopers and just obliterate them with the Force. From what we saw, I think we're landing somewhere in between. Cal did seem like he could handle himself pretty well against stormtroopers, who are probably the base, most easy-to-kill enemy units in the game, but it's not like in The Force Unleashed, where Starkiller will automatically deflect blaster bolts. I noticed kind of a targeting system where you can focus on one enemy at a time, and it looked like blaster deflection, attacks, or force abilities have to be manually input and timed well. Cal did feel at times overly strong to me, or stronger than I was hoping for, but they did stress that the player we were watching was one of their best, and that it took a couple tries for him to record the gameplay we saw. I've also been told that this game is punishing. I'm hoping the game feels a little more difficult once we get our hands on it, and there's a good balance between not being a fully trained Force user, but still being able to pull off some satisfying moves. And a lot of those moves did look awesome, like slowing down time and then throwing a stormtrooper into his own blast. I'm getting to speak to the devs tomorrow, so I hope I'll get some of this clarified. Speaking of the Force, that feeds into that sense that Cal feels a little strong. I can forgive that since this is a game and we want it to be fun and exciting, and again, this is 3 hours into the story. We'll probably be struggling a lot more in the earlier segments of the game. The Game Informer article that was also released this morning tells us that a Jedi in hiding named Seer will be helping Cal complete his training, so there's a good chance we will see some progression. For the sake of the demo and showing off gameplay, it wouldn't be very exciting to see the first few minutes of the game where Cal can't do much in the Force, doesn't have a lightsaber, and is basically just on the run. I think we might find ourselves being much more defensive with the Force early on until we learn to be more aggressive with it. I also noticed Force Echo, which seemed to show us that Cal can sense a person's final moments in life. Or maybe it's more versatile, like it's probably just a way to catch more story details or lore throughout the game. The Game Informer article also mentions a Force meter that recharges as you strike enemies, so if you rely on the Force too much, you're going to have to start using your lightsaber. The Droid Companion, BD-1, looked like he'll be a lot of fun to utilize in different ways. He solves puzzles, gets into hard-to-reach places, provides you with your map, and heals you as long as you have the consumables to do it. He can also scan items for information, similar to the Force Echo ability. That reminds me that while watching the demo, I appreciated that when healing or using the Force, there was a significant animation time for just about everything. So while that time slow ability seems powerful, it can be dangerous to attempt in the middle of combat. The types of enemies already looked like they were pretty varied, and we only saw a handful. I mentioned stormtroopers who were probably just low-level nuisances. Scout troopers were a little more formidable, armed with some sort of melee weapon. Flame troopers looked like they couldn't just be attacked head-on without serious consequences. And then the purge troopers were the most difficult that we saw so far. They look like they might take a lot of input to defeat between dodging, rolling, countering, and attacking. I've been told that they're very formidable, and even the player in the video took some significant damage from one. We also know that we'll be seeing KX droids, and of course there were environmental enemies as well. We saw the web weavers of Kashyyyk mentioned in Aftermath Life Debt, those giant spider things, as well as other fauna of the planet. I imagine each location we visit will have new enemies to keep players on their toes. I would highly recommend giving the Game Informer article a read as well. It mentions inspirations from games like Metroid Prime, encouraging players to explore areas a second time after unlocking new abilities, suggesting that the game isn't fully linear. It sounds like you can ask your pilot to take you back to locations you've already seen whenever you want to find new collectibles, and then you can go back to progressing the story. The article also says they played about half an hour of the Kashyyyk mission, which is only about 20% of the planet. We don't have any word on the game's length yet, but I would say that's a good sign. Overall, I was impressed with what I saw. It wasn't the perfect scenario I was imagining in my head, but I do think Respawn is delivering on their idea of thoughtful combat. I'm optimistic that I will find keeping Cal alive is even more of a struggle than the gameplay trailer let on. In fact, the Game Informer article suggests exactly that. It's not about button-mashing combos, it's about precision. You're going to have to be a skilled and practiced player to survive running into the middle of even a group of stormtroopers and expecting to survive. While the demo gave me some questions that I want clarified, it definitely made me more excited to try it out for myself. My conversation with the devs should help clear some things up, and I hope to know more about the game soon. If you guys have questions, leave them in the comments, and I'll try to get some answers for you. I'd also love to hear what you thought of the demo. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and consider checking out our Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.